Justice League is hitting theaters, and we are all in for your review right here on Screen Junkies News. Hello, I'm Dan Murrell.
And I'm Roth Cornet, and we will be spoiler-free today.
Spoiler-free, no spoilers. I'm sure there will be a spoiler review coming later.
Yes.
But for now, this is our regular review of Justice League, the kind of crowning. It's been a long road from Man of Steel to this point, but this is kind of the, I think, a big point of certainly an achievement for this era of DC films at Warner Brothers, the DCEU or whatever you want to call it. We found out that wasn't the actual name.
Yes.
But this is kind of the apex point from what we've seen so far from the DC movies. It's been a long road to get here, but it's out in theaters. Lot to unpack with this for me. I know, Roth, I'm curious, what were your thoughts on this movie?
So I think that you make an excellent point in terms of this is both the end and the beginning, right?
Yeah.
This is what it's all been leading to in one respect, and also sets the tone for where they're going from here. And I think if you look at it as a film just on its own, one of the things that is often said about these films is, hey, we made this for the fans, right? Mm-hmm. I have to say, I have never believed that more than with this film. And that's not in any way a criticism, by the way.
Right.
What I mean by that is, if you care about these characters, whether it's from the comics or sort of from the animated series, or because you already care about this Batman and this Wonder Woman because you've gotten to know them a little bit more, you will care about them in this film even more.
Yeah.
And it sets up the other characters because we didn't have an Aquaman movie yet.
Yeah.
Or a Cyborg movie or a Flash movie. We met Flash a little bit.
Yeah.
It gives you enough of them to start to invest in them and their relationships, but it's not as deep as if it was a solo film for each of them.
Yeah, this is almost a standalone.
Yes.
Really. I mean, this in tone, in look, in characterization, I think even for the characters, has very little to do with the movies, for me, that came before. There are some events that happened, some big ones, that they have to deal with.
Yes.
Just by necessity, this is the movie that they're in.
I mean, I think we can say they have to deal with Superman.
They have to deal with Superman. And I think people know that they do deal with Superman.
Yeah.
We'll talk about how they do it, but they do deal with Superman in this movie. But that's really kind of the biggest thing as far as carryover that they deal with in this movie that's a carryover from the other films. The feel of the movie is not the same tonally. And I don't mean, a lot of people said, like, well, Joss Whedon came in, he did some reshoots and he did some writing, and you'll be able to tell what's Joss Whedon and what's Zack Snyder. And I didn't find that to be the case.
I was actually, that's one of the things that I was most impressed with, is that structurally, this is very sound. You know what I mean? Like, it does, in this sense. Certainly some of the criticisms of, say, Suicide Squad were that it felt very fragmented. This doesn't.
No.
This feels like one cohesive film with a story.
This neither looks nor feels like any of the other movies in the DCEU.
They blended together very well.
Yeah, that's to their credit, I think, from a structural standpoint, and that it has a plot.
Yes.
And I know this seems very simplistic, but this is the world that we live in. It has a plot. It goes from A to B to C, mostly. It's not this kind of, I feel like this is, you can feel the course correction a little bit, because it's not, when you look at Batman v Superman, it was very complex. There was a lot of things that were all happening simultaneously. Same with Suicide Squad. A lot of things kind of happening here, happening there, happening there, happening there. This is very streamlined. There's a dude, you got to get the team, you got to get the dude.
Yes.
That's pretty much it. And it's very much handed over to the characters. And I agree with you. It is both an end and a beginning, because I could see this as kind of being... when people ask me what I thought of this movie, and I think about it, I mean, really, my thoughts on this movie are almost null. This feels like they had to do this movie. They have a vision for where they want to go from here. And they just kind of had to do this movie first. It's not worth, for me, getting into a whole fight over. This really, to me, does feel like Warner Brothers saying, okay, This has been since 2013 with Man of Steel. We've gone down this road. We've taken a lot of lumps. We found out what people like. We found out what people don't like. Let's introduce these characters and let's get this universe to a place where we move forward from here.
Yeah, it feels, and again, I'm saying this as a positive thing because I happen to be, particularly with like the first couple of seasons of The Flash, a big fan of how DC has done their television. And so it felt tonally in line with that. I don't think it's mimicking that, and it's certainly at a cinematic scale, right? These are large, big set pieces, and there's a lot more money, and these are big, great actors and big performances. But it actually did feel in line with that. There were a lot of shots that I really appreciated because they felt like and look, every comic book movie is going to do this, but they had really felt like they were ripped right out of panels that I thought were just lovely and nice accent pieces. There's a lot of like, the superheroes you love being the superheroes you love, you know, and sort of doing what they do. And that's where I really think that this is something that I can see. I feel like I see Jeff Johns' hand on this a little bit.
I mean, the big question I think a lot of people had was, is this going to feel like a Joss Whedon movie or is this going to feel like a Zack Snyder movie?
Neither.
This doesn't feel like anyone's movie.
Yeah.
This feels like a movie that was made by everyone. It doesn't have a distinct look. It doesn't have, to me, a distinct tone other than pleasantness in a weird way, and action. It's fine. It's fine. It's not. It's the same superhero action that you've seen before. The characters are throwing off one-liners. Some of them work. Some of them don't work. It has superheroes in it. If you like comic book movies, you'll probably like this one. I think if you're a DC fan, you'll probably like it a little bit more. If you don't like comic book movies, you're probably not going to like this as much.
That's where I couldn't agree more. You know, like I sat in the theater afterwards going, you know, for example, I probably have family members that are not involved or invested in comic book movies at all, whether they're Marvel or DC. I don't think they would really connect.
No, it's not a movie like Logan, I think, where there's a more dramatic thing to connect to.
That was the example when we were walking to our car after screening. That was the example I gave you. Like, Logan is a movie that I could tell my brother to watch, and I feel like he would connect to the movie because he would connect to that character. And frankly, though he is in a very human way, right? Yeah. Even though these are larger than life characters, this film, if you're not already invested in these characters, I think it's going to be very hard to get there.
Yeah.
So Logan is a much more focused story. This is an ensemble story, right? The villain in this film, Steppenwolf, is look, Marvel has a villain problem, right? Any movie in which you have to deal with a lot of heroes, and not only do you have to deal with a lot of heroes and their stories in this one, you have to introduce a few and give us at least enough of their background so that we understand it. And you have to set up who this villain is. So there does end up being chunks of exposition to get you through it. And at that point, you really cannot invest all that much time in the villain and who he is.
Steppenwolf is Malekith and the Abomination and every other CGI. He's the third act of Wonder Woman.
Yes.
It's kind of, I was trying to think about what in my head I would kind of compare this whole movie to.
Yes.
This is kind of like the end of Wonder Woman, where it's comic booky, it's bright, it's loud. The villain doesn't really matter that much. It's just he's just a vehicle of destruction, and you have a big comic book fight. So if you liked the end of Wonder Woman, or you thought it was just, I thought the end of Wonder Woman was fine. I thought it was the least interesting part of the movie. I thought it was fine. I thought this movie was fine. It's that kind of action. It's just, he's big, he's loud, he's forgettable, he's superfluous to the plot, other than the fact that he's the bad guy that they have to fight. And the movie is about the heroes.
Yes. He's only there to get the heroes together. He's the inciting incident. And so it's kind of like, any insight. He is the global disaster.
He's the
what
MacGuffin.
I mean? He's the MacGuffin. If this was a Roland Emmerich movie, he would be the tidal wave.
Yeah.
So the tidal wave doesn't really have a personality.
No.
It's there to force the heroes to do the thing to save Earth.
As far as the heroes themselves go, I thought that Aquaman was probably the standout for me.
He was so fun.
He just, I could see Jason Momoa having a good, he kind of reminds me of the characterization of some of the early Marvel movies that weren't great, but the heroes were good. And the way that Chris Evans was great as Captain America. And I thought the first Captain America movie, which was for me, but I thought Chris Evans was great. That's how I felt about Jason Momoa in this movie. Once they get to an actual Aquaman movie, I think has the potential to be a really fun movie, and I think that character's got a lot of places to go. The Flash, I was a little take it or leave it. Some of his one-liners worked on me, some of them didn't. He's the meta character, so he's kind of commenting on everything.
Yes.
That gets a little tiresome for me, if I'm being honest. But sometimes it works, sometimes it didn't. You just take it or leave it. I like the look of this character. Again, I think there's a potential for a really engaging. This movie is, for me, more potential than delivered. This movie sets up a lot of things that have the potential to pay off going forward. It's very forward-looking. It's not at all looking back, and I think that's by design.
I think that's by design. It is actually probably a really smart design. The Flash is there to, stand in as us, as the audience, and comment about how cool it is to be around Batman, which it is. And I enjoyed him. I feel like they set up a few things with Ben Affleck's Batman in terms of exploring the fact that he's the guy in this that is, it's in the trailer. He's the guy in this that's rich. He's the guy that's human. And as such, in many ways, far more vulnerable than the rest of them. I won't say what they do with Superman, but I liked it. I will say that.
Yeah.
I actually really enjoyed that bit. And Jason Momoa, I am sold on Aquaman. And Wonder Woman is used. Look, she is there because she's great, and we loved Wonder Woman, and she's there. She's given the burden of some of the exposition, right?
I have a suspicion. Like, the thing about the movie that worked for me the most was that there is a point where there is a conflict between Wonder Woman and Batman.
Yes.
Not in a fight, not in a physical fighting kind of way, but
moral. It was kind of a moral question.
It's a moral dilemma. They're at a crossroads, and Ben Affleck and Gal Gadot have a couple scenes together where they're kind of exploring how that relates to their nature as people and what they've gone through. That was what worked the best for me in this movie. I don't know if that was a rewrite. I don't know if that was what was in it originally. That's the part of the movie that made me go like, oh, okay, these characters have really gone through some stuff, both of them, and that has shaped their worldview into these two different ways. It's the kind of conflict in a way that they tried to set up with Batman v Superman, but didn't quite for me. I liked how they contrasted those characters. That being said, that was a very small part of the movie, but I liked that part.
I think there were some good character moments here, and I think there were some good moments with the team in which they were really gelling, but I agree with you. So that for me I liken that actually more to the conflict they set up with Tony and Captain America in Civil War, where it's just didn't play out throughout the entire movie, and it's not as big, but there's just a fundamental difference of opinion in approach, and it's also about how do you step into the role of leadership and what are the barriers to that. I thought some of that was really interesting to explore in a movie like this, right? That was kind of like a philosophical question about why you choose to be a leader or not, or why you're equipped to be a leader or not. And I thought that was actually really, really interesting. Again, if you like that character of Wonder Woman, you'll like her again here.
Sure. I think it's fair to say that...
Which I do like that character.
I do too. I think it's fair to say that Cyborg is present.
I felt bad because it felt to me that Cyborg really, if any one of them, I actually didn't think you needed to have the Aquaman movie yet, although there's a scene that I think might leave some people scratching their heads.
It's definite setup.
It's setting up his movie. But Cyborg, for me, it felt like kind of got the short shrift.
He did. He got the shaft. I think that they announced Cyborg as part of the team at an earlier development phase. Yeah. Maybe going forward, if they had not yet, they could have saved him for a little bit later, because he kind of is just, they kind of just blow through his whole thing, and then he's just a person who's metal and can do things.
He felt like his storyline was actually a more intricate part of maybe in an earlier iteration was a more intricate part of the plot and even the villain.
Yeah.
And then that just never really went anywhere.
Yeah, it went away. So yeah, Cyborg I think gets the short end of the stick here. I said this about this movie is there are a lot of things that I didn't like. There are a lot of things that I thought were just I was bored. I've seen it. There's nothing particularly innovative about this movie for me. It's mostly character stuff. And really, for me, if the goal was to get me more excited about the future of these movies, then they did do that. Because I think that there are now roads that they can go that they have opened themselves up to, avenues that they've opened themselves up to that I think are exciting and could be really entertaining, and maybe take the lessons learned from what they've done so far, apply them, mix in different elements and make some really cool stuff. This movie is kind of a big nothing for me, if I'm being honest. It's just it's 2 hours. It moves quickly. There's some action. There's some superheroes. It's not worth getting into a fight over. And I really do hope that
none of these are worth let's all stop fighting about movies.
I agree. I really hope that we can debate. We can debate, but I hope that we take this as a new opportunity as fans too. I mean, I get it with Man of Steel and all of these other DC movies. You know, I know that I've certainly gone overboard on some of it at times, and there's been some piling on. But I also think that I hope this is a new beginning for everyone, because these movies are truly not worth years now of yelling and name calling and, let's be honest, death threats and everything else that has been come from whether you like or don't like these movies.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, well, obviously.
I hope we can all move forward from here.
But death threats are not fun.
Let's take the last 4+ years and say, okay, that was a thing. And let's move
forward. But I will say that the film, though, and this will apply more to you and I and people that see a lot of movies, that see most of the movies that come out.
Yeah.
Now we're since Iron Man, we've probably watched, and I don't have the exact number on me, upwards of 25 superhero movies.
At least. 17 Marvels, 5 of these, I think.
Then a few X-Men here and
Deadpool's,
there.
Logan's.
You got some Spider-Man in there. We're nearing 30.
Yeah.
We're nearing 30 superhero movies that we've seen, right, in that period of time. So as a result, I think that all of that comes into each new viewing, right?
Yeah.
And there is now, for many audiences that are watching all of these films, an expectation of seeing something new. However, for the person that's been waiting to see Justice League come together on the big screen for X amount of years, I think they really will love this and have a good time and be happy with it. The average moviegoer probably will not connect to it. They'll go, okay,
Yeah.
that was you know, like I had a good time at the movies, or that wasn't for me.
Yeah.
I want us also to simply move forward and create individual films that have their own identity and flavor, that tell a character story, that do dive into the characters. We can't have a Logan every time out of the gate.
No.
Nor should we. But if you're going to see Justice League and see these characters on the big screen, I do think you'll enjoy this, and you should go see the film.
I told you this after the movie. My official rating of Justice League is, it's fine, whatever, leave me out of it. That's my official position on Justice League. Take it as you will. So there you go.
My position on Justice League is exactly what I said. This is a movie that, more than any of the other films that have claimed this, was made for the fans.
It was. And that's... I'm glad you brought that before we go. I'm glad you brought that up too, because that is something that has hit me in a wrong way, which is when a lot of these movies, it's not just DC movies, but when these comic movies get bad receptions, a lot of people try to deflect that by saying, like, well, it wasn't made for the critics, it was made for the fans. And I hate that as a way to kind of dismiss bad reviews, but I think that is very true of this movie. This was made with fans of DC Comics in mind, first and foremost, where I don't think some of the other ones were.
Yes.
And I think this one was absolutely made for fans of these characters.
And this is where I get a little meta as well, as we have done a little bit here. Meta of the review of the review, which is this. If you think about what DC characters stand for, if you think about the kind of values that they represent, particularly Superman and Wonder Woman, and the inherent sense of striving for good in the world, good that is above most human capacity to reach, right? Because these are larger than life, iconic archetypal characters. Let's strive to just be able to talk about movies civilly. And then in that way, we honor these characters.
Let's all sit in the Hall of Justice together and debate about movies.
I'm going to get so much crap for that. But hey, if you like the DC characters, I really do think you like this one.
Yeah.
No.
So there you go. That's
Justice
our thoughts
League.
on Justice League. We're done.
We're done.
With this movie. It's out. Enjoy it or don't.
We're probably going to do a spoiler thing, though.
Be nice, as we say in our comments now. Dalton, be nice. And join us. I'm sure we'll get deeper into this on the spoiler review and a whole new opportunity for us to disagree with everyone on the internet and agree with everyone simultaneously. I don't know how it works anymore. I'm Dan Murrell.
I'm Roth Cornet.
We'll see you next time.
Click here for more awesome Screen Junkies news and click the logo to subscribe.